The inauguration of the Suez Canal on November 17, 1869 was a major watershed in global and Italian history. The opening of a new passage in the Red Sea lay at the origin of the Italian colonial project, as in 1869 the Genoese navigation company Rubattino bought the first naval outpost of Massawa, a port acquired by the state in 1882, which would be the base of Italy's later penetration in Eritrea. The opening of a new route to the Indian Ocean was also a major factor in the so-called Southern Question, for a couple of reasons. First, the proposed train line from Calais to the Apulian port of Brindisi, ideally connecting India to northern Europe via the Mediterranean, turned out to be a missed opportunity for infrastructural development, as the route was redirected to Marseille, Genoa and Trieste for lack of foreign investment, and the south remained isolated. Second, the new pathway for cheaper Indian cereal grains exposed the southern agrarian economy to global competition, leading to the arrival of foreign agricultural products in Italy, including cheaper American wheat from the Atlantic, and to the reconfiguration of Sicily from its historic role as producer and exporter of grain since the Roman times to its new position as importer of goods. The Sicilian agrarian model, largely based on isolated land owning and cultivation for export, was already in trouble. Italy's first protectionist laws of 1878, which reduced demand from international partners, further heightened the crisis, moving Sicilian peasants to consider opportunities elsewhere. As I discussed in the episode on Filippo De Cecco, the new route Palermo-New Orleans was opened in 1881, in coincidence with the French occupation of Tunisia, which curtailed North Africa as a possible outlet. In that same year, the Sicilian writer Giovanni Verga published his masterpiece novel I Malavoglia, a veristic portrait of the island's backwardness. In that same year, the Sicilian entrepreneur Ignazio Florio Sr., owner of a major navigation company in the Mediterranean, merged his fleet with the Red Sea liners of Rubattino, forming the Navigazione Generale Italiana, the Italian navigation company which would expand during the years of the great Italian immigration to become the most important point of connection between Italy and the United States. At the time of the merger, the Florio fleet transported tourists and migrants, but also freight, in connection to the tuna business which Ignazio Florio Sr. had expanded in 1874 with the purchase of the Egadian Islands west of Marsala, where he developed the tonnare nets and a new technique for conserving tuna with oil in cans. Ignazio Sr. was the grandson of Paolo Florio, who had started the family business almost a century earlier. The terrible earthquake of 1783 in Calabria had caused him to move to Palermo, where he had made a good fortune selling spices and colonial products. His son Vincenzo, father of Ignazio Sr., had turned the store into a polyvalent enterprise, investing in the production of Marsala wine, tuna fishing, sulfur extraction for the British Empire, and navigation. His empire also included a bank, a British insurance company, and a foundry. Now, despite the agrarian crisis and the early phase of emigration, the 1880s coincided for Sicily with a period of rising national influence, as seen in the election of Ignazio Florio Sr. to the Italian Senate in 1883, the growing impact on the local economy of remittances from migrants and returnees, and in the ascent to Prime Minister of Francesco Crispi in 1887. He was the first Sicilian and the first Southerner to reach such position. The island's parallel paths of crisis and expansion symbolically converged in 1891. And a few facts make this year a decisive one in Sicilian history. First, on February 6, 1891, Crispi resigned from his position as Prime Minister following criticism of his management of the Eritrean colony and financial deficit. He would serve a second term from 1893 to 1896, but as we'll see, his initial reformism would then turn into a repressive and authoritarian style. Second, on May 1st, 1891, Giuseppe De Felice Giuffrida founded the first Fascio Siciliano in Catania, an association protesting against the landowning structure of the Sicilian economy, promoting more power for workers and migration returnees, and pioneering socialism in Italy. Oddly enough, it would be Crispi who ordered the military repression of the ensuing network of Fasci Siciliani in 1894. Third, on May 17, 1891, Ignazio Florio Sr. died, leaving his economic empire to Ignazio Jr., his son. Lastly, on November 15, 1891, King Umberto and the new Prime Minister Antonio Rudini, another Sicilian, inaugurated the first national exposition ever organized in southern Italy, in Palermo. The exposition launched a successful expression of Italian modernist architecture, or Liberty style, in the island, and became the starting point for a new Sicilian Renaissance. Its main patron was Ignazio Florio Jr. Under his leadership, the exposition became a fruitful time to renovate Palermo and bring Sicily to the world's attention. Ignazio Florio Jr. launched the career of the Palermo architect Ernesto Basile, who designed the pavilions of the exposition in a modern fusion of Roman, Arab, and Norman styles, setting in motion the urban renewal of Palermo, as seen in Basile's plans for the Teatro Massimo in 1897 and Villa Florio in 1902. Later on, Basile would be the architect of the new parliamentary hall of Palazzo Montecitorio in Rome, a project which he completed in 1927. Now, Basile's style gave form to the entrepreneurial ambitions of the island's new bourgeoisie and inspired the fascinating season of the Sicilian liberty, which includes, among its masterpieces, the villas Igea, Ida, Basile, Favaloro, and the extraordinary bathhouse of Mondello. In addition to Villa Florio, Villa Amalfitano also became the center of Palermo's Belle Époque. The villa was owned by the Sicilian English entrepreneur Joseph Whittaker, banker, archaeologist, ornithologist, and sportsman who allegedly founded the Anglo-Palermitan Athletic and Football Club, so the Palermo soccer team, in 1898. Whittaker and the Florios had many ties, from the Marsala business to banking. And it was thanks to his mediating role as British consul of Palermo, and thanks to the Florio liners, that many British nobles and entrepreneurs visited the Exposition of Palermo, which put Sicily on the map and launched it as the trendiest meeting place for the European elite. British industrialists already had a significant commercial interest in the island, mainly because of sulfur. The 19th century discoveries of its applications in the industry as a reagent for creating sulfuric acid and soda, in agriculture as a bacterial killer for reducing powdery mildew on vines and fruit-bearing plants, and in the production of explosives, had made sulfur a highly sought-after material. As the rich volcanic soil of Sicily provided 95% of global production, sulfur was really the driving force of the Sicilian economy, at least until 1906, when Hermann Frasch developed a less expensive method of extraction in Texas and made American sulfur more competitive. Now, you may have heard about the tragic stories of children in Sicilian mines, the so-called Carusi, especially if you have read the famous short stories Rosso Malpelo by Giovanni Verga or Ciaula scopre la luna, Ciaula discovers the moon by Luigi Pirandello. The agrarian model we described of isolated landowning and export production applied to the sulfur business as well, as the owners of sulfur mines, solfatare, selling to foreign clients, did not pay much attention to their workers' conditions or safety. Some Fasci Siciliani were actually born to protest against this system of exploitation and the perils of working in the mines. Against this backdrop, the English Sicilian Sulphur Company, which Ignazio Florio Jr. founded in 1896, joined Sicilian sulfur producers together in a common network, thus permitting greater reliability with their British partner and accountability of individual solfatari toward workers. Okay, from what we said so far at the time of the Palermo Exposition, the Florios owned a real empire. The monopoly of sulfur production, the Marsala winery, the Tonnare in the Aegean Islands, 40% of Navigazione Generale Italiana, the Oretea foundry, and the Banco Florio. In the subsequent years, Ignazio Jr. really brought the family enterprise to its peak by funding the Teatro Massimo of Palermo in 1897, by starting the construction of the great shipyard of Palermo the same year, and becoming the main shareholder of the Sicilian newspaper L'Ora in 1900. But what made this patrimony really effective? How does economic influence become a cultural patrimony? That's the story of Ignazio Jr.'s wife Franca, who turned the family business into a legendary story, and Sicily into the most coveted destination in Europe. Born to an old aristocratic family in Sicily as Francesca Paola Iacona della Motta dei Baroni di San Giuliano, Lady Franca married Ignazio Jr. on February 11, 1893, and soon became, as she would be more commonly known, the Queen of Palermo. While her husband gave work to 16,000 people in the city, her role, her beauty, and her presence became the attractive face of the family business, as she successfully synthesized in her lifestyle nobility and fashion, depth and elegance, rootedness and trendiness. In the legendary parties at her villa, Donna Franca interacted with the European nobility and welcomed among her guests the German Emperor Wilhelm II, who called her Italy's star, the British King Edward VII and his wife Alexander of Denmark, the Russian Empress Alexandra Fyodorovna, and the Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. Yes, the one who was killed in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914, setting off World War I. In addition to her aristocratic appeal, which earned her the role of lady-in-waiting of Italy's Queen Elena of Montenegro, Donna Franca also became an important subject in Italian contemporary art. After the Italian poet D'Annunzio defined her as l'unica, the one and only, in 1901 the renowned artist Giovanni Baldini captured her beauty, confidence, and power in one of the most celebrated portraits of Italian painting. In 1905, the sculptor Pietro Canonica created a bust of her, which is now conserved at the Galleria Borghese in Rome. Lastly, as she hosted bankers like J.P. Morgan, Vanderbilt, or Rothschild, artists like Wagner, Puccini, Oscar Wilde, Maupassant, Caruso, Maria Callas, and actresses like Greta Garbo and Grace Kelly, the fame of Donna Franca really extended from her family business to Palermo as well. To put it in contemporary terms, she was the most important influencer of her time. Despite her worldliness, she even used her two yachts, Sultana and Egusa, to attend parties in the French Riviera, and despite her role in creating the appeal of Sicily and the family enterprise, Donna Franca actually lived a very dramatic personal life, marked by betrayals, the loss of 3 children, Ignazio, Giovanna, and Jacobina, and the silent work of raising her 2 remaining daughters, Igea and Giulia. Her tragedies, in a way, anticipated the later decline of the Florios, starting from the First World War. As the German sinking of the liner Lusitania in 1915 caused the paralysis of Atlantic traffic, and later the American intervention in the war, the Florio naval enterprise started to decline and to accumulate huge debts. After the war, Ignazio Jr. and Franca moved to Rome in 1924, and the family began to pay off losses with the sale of their businesses, assets, villas, and properties. In 1935, even the jewels and furniture of Donna Franca were auctioned off in Palermo. After liquidating the family patrimony to avoid insolvency, Ignazio and Franca retired to private life. Franca will die in 1950, and Ignazio will die in 1957 after returning to Palermo. Their life and work were the driving force of a glorious Sicilian age, which certainly needs to be appreciated and rediscovered. Despite the bitter end, their story, however, contains two important elements that I want to highlight. One, the reminder of the volatility of industrial ventures. And two, the necessity of myth-making in the self-representation of a business. First, the story of the Florios is a reminder of the instability of industrial fortunes, whose beginning or end might sometimes depend upon external or uncontrollable factors. Very simply put, a business can end. But to know this is actually a good recipe against the temptations of pride, omnipotence, or self-deceit. In this sense, I want to stress the remarkable gesture by Ignazio Florio Jr. of selling everything to avoid bankruptcy, as a testament to the nobility of his entrepreneurial drive, which was not ultimately focused on possessing or accumulating, but rather on creating patrimonies that last over time. Within this horizon, a concluded industrial venture is not a nostalgic ruin, but rather a long-lasting legacy. In the same way as the successful story of Renaissance families like the Este in Ferrara, the Gonzaga in Mantua, the Malatesta in Rimini, or the Della Rovere in Urbino did not end with the winding down of a season, a lifetime, or perhaps a few generations. The palaces, works, and stories they built in their golden age outlasted them, continuing to create value. In the same way, creating value for an entrepreneur is not just about capital, but also about creating fruits that last, as we still see in Sicily. And this is the true legacy of Ignazio Jr. The second element I want to stress here is the link between entrepreneurship and myth-making. This idea is in a way exemplified by the automobile race Targa Florio, an open-road endurance race over the island, and later of laps on the mountains near Palermo, which Ignazio Jr. and his brother Vincenzo created in 1906. The sports car race, which is the oldest in the world and one of the most legendary of the 20th century, is certainly an enduring testimony to the Florios' legendary season. The real link between industry and storytelling, however, finds its most visible expression in the charm and work of Donna Franca. A financial empire is not enough to create fruits that last. A monopoly is not enough to generate dreams. An industrial enterprise is not enough to produce meaningful interactions. It takes influence, appeal, and style to turn monetary capital into a cultural capital. It takes architecture, art, flair, even worldly parties to turn entrepreneurship into a fully human story of money and desire, of profit and enjoyment, growth and aspirations. It takes a myth of beauty and a conscious entrepreneurial aesthetics, as embodied by Donna Franca, to create influence, to make a lifestyle desirable, to make a transitory business everlasting. In light of these observations, the story of the Florios then is really a patrimony of Italian industrial culture, as well as an enduring example of cultural entrepreneurship as a form of soft diplomacy. Beyond this, the life of Ignazio Jr. and Donna Franca Florio is still today a symbol of the Belle Époque of Palermo and of the Dolce Vita which made Sicily an island of European dreams. Thank you very much for watching, and I invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel or to the webpage www.italianinnovators.com to receive notifications of new episodes, the lessons of the Italian Innovators course, and updates about my online lectures. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter for additional materials about the show. Thanks again, arrivederci e alla prossima.